Okay, I think we're live. Hello, everyone. Just first, I want to acknowledge the fact that my background here is a little different than normal. So we're getting renovations in our house, and our kitchen is getting new cabinetry today. So a lot of banging around and stuff going on in there. So this is my little hideaway today. So it's going to be hopefully a little bit quieter than it is in the house, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. Welcome here, everyone. I just want to make sure you all can hear me okay. Would just love to know that if someone can just let me know in the comments that you can hear me okay, picture's good, etc. Well, I'm just gonna hope. Oh, great. You guys can hear me perfect. Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, so hello, welcome. My name's Tom Froese. If you're new to the channel, welcome here to everybody. Yeah, it's the first live stream since August of last year. So I think it's about time to do another. And yeah, I'm always a little bit rusty when I kick these things off, but I'll warm up. So first of all, maybe just to get warmed up, where are you all coming from? I'd love to know kind of what, where you guys are watching from. I'm in Chilliwack, which is just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia. So that's where I am. I see that Milan is from England. Where in England are you from, Milan? Reno, Nevada. Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. All right. Looks like we're just still getting warmed up. Maybe we'll wait a little bit to really kick it off. Taylor is from South Africa. Welcome here. That's amazing. What time is it where you are in South Africa? We've got Yvonne from Berkeley, Vancouver. Woo woo. Nice. Originally from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Nice to have you here, Marina. Yeah. So maybe I'll just go through just how the Q&A will work. I see that Milan is from Brighton, which is just outside of London. Yeah, I know about Brighton. Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome, CK. Yeah, so let's just talk about how the Q&A will work. And, it's pretty simple. You guys ask me questions in the chat, and I'll try and answer as many as I can within the hour. I hope that the session will be kind of around an hour long. We'll end around 11. So it's 10 now. This is the kind of official kickoff time. So I'll be prioritizing the questions in this order. So I'll be answering super chats first. Super chats are a new thing on my channel. I've never used them before, so I'm going to see how they go. Super chats are just a great way of kind of supporting, these things that I do. They're always free, and I always want these Q&A type things in all my YouTube channels, all my YouTube videos to be for everybody, and obviously for free for everyone to watch. And the super chat's just a possible opportunity for you guys to support me a little bit if you can or want. So I will be, just because those are paid, I'll kind of bump those up ahead of the queue if there's too many questions to answer. So I had a couple pre-written questions, and then of course, then I'll get right to the live chat. I'm going to try and get through these as quick as possible with short answers, which is always hard for me. So all questions are welcome. Right now, I'm thinking a lot about process. I'm actually in the process of writing a book about the creative process. So if you're thinking about what kind of question you might ask, maybe a prompt is, what kind of struggles are you going through right now in your creative process? Like, are you having trouble getting started, or going through too many revisions with clients, or things like that? So if you have any questions around what you're struggling right now with in your creative process, that's something maybe to think about. So yeah, I think other than that, yeah, I guess I just wanted to remind you guys, I am writing this book, and part of this activity is writing on stage, so to speak. So I have a blog, tomfroze.medium.com. And that's where I've just been writing out my thoughts and just really just trying to get a feel for what my voice is as a writer. And of course, getting it out there and seeing what sticks and clicks with readers out there. So if you're interested in following along my process of writing this book, tomfroze.medium.com is where you'll see all that happening. So why don't we just begin with the questions? So let's see. So yeah, I wanted to just jump on to one of the first questions that came in just through email, and this is from Rebecca, and she asks, I'm currently doing one of your classes and enjoying it, so was really pleased to hear of your new class and live Q&A. If you're starting out with an intention of getting into the illustration industry in the near future, what would you start with in terms of Instagram, website, Pinterest, etc.? At the moment, I have an Instagram and Redbubble, but I'd like to get a bit more serious and now start reaching out to clients. I don't have a website. Can you start reaching out to clients with just Instagram, Pinterest, or that kind of thing? Or would you recommend a website first? So thank you for your question, Rebecca. And I think having a website is I think the most professional place to show your work if you want to get clients. I think Instagram is also a very valid option. It really comes down to what kind of work do you have to show, and what's the best place to show it? Or another way of thinking of that is, what story are you trying to tell about your work? What kind of clients are you trying to attract? What do you want to show them you can do? So if you have any work that you've done professionally, or any work that kind of would attract a client, I'd say try and build a website around that. Now, the catch is that a website needs work. You can't just have like a website in one project, because it really accentuates the fact that you only have one project up there, and that can be a bit distracting for clients, or make them think that maybe you're inexperienced, I guess is the way of putting it. So that is a conundrum for beginning illustrators who want to get clients, is they're inexperienced, but they have to somehow show that they're experienced, but they're not. And then, how do you get that first experience so you can say you have experience? It is really that catch-22 situation. And so it's really all about trying to leverage what you have in that moment. Maybe you don't have a lot of experience, but you are really creative and you're doing good work. My recommendation is always to be creating some kind of project that's self-initiated if you're not getting the work professionally right now, because that at least shows that you're motivated. It's an opportunity to showcase what your actual creative abilities are, and quite frankly, it's a way for you to get more acquainted with how you work professionally, right? It's all going to build on itself. So I'd say, if you have an Instagram account, make sure that you're sharing work that's related only to your illustration work and your client work. At least that looks more professional. And then as soon as you have enough work to show on a website, make that website a thing. I think having an online shop like Redbubble or Society6 or something like that, I don't think those are obviously great if you want to be making things that you sell, like selling your own illustrated products. But I don't know how much that convinces a client that you're that they would hire you. So if that makes sense. But yeah, website I'd say is the thing you should aim for. So thank you very much for your question, Rebecca. So I'm going to just look at the chat here, and Milan right at the top has asked, what's some good illustration books to recommend to look at for ideas and inspiration? Well, I do enjoy finding new illustrators on Instagram. Collected work or anthology is always nice. So maybe, well, thanks for your question, Milan. I'd say it really depends what kind of illustration you want to be inspired by. Like you could get, I don't know, Communication Arts Illustration Annual, and that's going to get you in touch with a lot of contemporary illustration that's going on right now. So Communication Arts is, they do a design annual, a typography annual, an illustration annual, and these are all competitions that artists, like in my case, like to the illustration annual, I submit work to them almost every year, and a selection of illustrators obviously get in the book, and then that's kind of like the best of the best for that year. And so that's a nice curated, very contemporary oriented illustration annual. There's also directories of illustration. Now, these are basically lookbooks that are geared toward art directors, people who hire illustration. So if you go to, there's actually one called the Directory of Illustration. There's another one called Workbook. There's American Illustration. I think actually American Illustration might be an annual as well. But basically directories of illustration are all going to put you in touch with kind of contemporary illustration. And what's nice about it is they're like books that you can look at offline. So yeah, I agree. Looking at illustration offline is always a nice thing to do. Another kind of way of finding illustration out in the wild is getting magazines that have great illustration in it, like the New York Times or the New Yorker magazine. Monocle magazine always has good illustrations in it. So, you know, when you have the opportunity to go to, say, a newsstand or a bookstore and browse the magazine rack, just look for magazines that have art direction in it, like illustration that kind of seems attractive to you. And that's a great way of being exposed to illustration. And what I like about that is you get a chance to see illustration in its, like, in the wild. It's not kind of like in isolation on someone's Instagram account or being showcased in an illustration annual with a whole bunch of other illustration. It's like it's actual, you get a chance to see how illustration is actually used once it's all like laid out in a magazine for that purpose. So I think that's just one of many ways of encountering illustration. So thank you for your question, Milan. And I'm going to scroll down the chat here. I see that Low Brown says, "Hello, Tom. Have you done editorial illustrations for news outlets? If so, I was wondering how's process from contacting the art director to completing the job? Thank you." Great question, Low Brown. Thank you. So the answer is yes, I've done editorial for like news outlets. One day, maybe the New York Times, but not yet. But Wall Street Journal or Globe and Mail, which is a big newspaper, national newspaper here in Canada. And of course, all kinds of magazines, I'd say, are kind of similar. I've done work for Monocle magazine, Wired UK, GQ France was a regular client of mine for a few years. So almost all of those jobs, I think all those jobs came to me. So I don't have the experience of trying to get work from a specific publisher or magazine. In I think every case, they came to me. I already had a website or some kind of publicity out there. Maybe my work was featured on a blog, or they came through my agent. I have two agents, one in the UK and one in the US. So in that sense, getting the job really just it came to me. In terms of kicking things off and going through the process, I'll try and summarize it in a nutshell, but it's really just like at first, usually an art director will email me and they'll say, you know, we have this job, want to illustrate the story, and they'll describe the story very briefly, and they'll say we have a budget, $500, $1,000, whatever it is. Depends on how many illustrations there are. what size the illustrations are. And it really also depends, I'm talking about budget, it also depends on how, on the magazine. Like, it's surprising to me that smaller magazines with less distribution often will have higher budgets because they're more niche and they're kind of part of a marketing budget. Whereas like a major magazine or newspaper like the Wall Street Journal or New York Times, I haven't illustrated for them personally, but I have the sense that their rates are kind of like, they're not as high as you'd think. And so all that to say, you kind of work out that thing at the beginning, just what the budget is and what the story is. And so assuming you're good with those things and you have the time to do it, then you get to it, you hop to it. So big thing you want to work out with a newspaper or a magazine is timeline. Big ones are usually fast timelines. Like, again, I'm going to use New York Times as an example. These are like a day or two from what I know. And then the longest you'll get, like with Wall Street Journal, the longest I've had is about a week. I prefer 2-week deadlines. So I actually prefer not to do these kinds of clients almost for that reason. But I've had as long as a month, sometimes 2 months. So it all depends. But then once you get going, in my process, and this is something I'm going to write about in my book, is that I have these very specific points where I'll come back to the client. And again, I'm going to try really hard just to keep it brief. But let's just say I've accepted a job from this art director. I go away. I'm going to come back and give them sketches. So when I come back, I've come up with basically 2 or 3 options per illustration, and no more than that. And my sketches are very kind of, I have a lot of things figured out in them already. Like I have what I call my 3 C's: content, composition, and concept. So I have all these things kind of very clearly laid out in the sketch, and then the art director will either give me feedback on those things or they'll say, I like this, good to go to finals. And so that anything that's like related to concept or content or composition, all these things that really change the layout of the actual illustration, I want that to happen in sketches as much as possible. So that's where it's just easier to change because it's basically pencil, and then we can kind of push that into a final once it's approved. And in that stage, I'm just really, I think a lot of the hard work is done, and it's really just about applying my technique and my style to the illustration. And usually by that point, what I show is approved, and then it gets sent off. So it's hard to summarize that whole illustration process in just like a one little short answer. But if there's anything in there that kind of raised more questions, feel free to follow up with another question, Low Brown. Let me know. So CK Arnold says, I'm taking your Sweet Spots class and love everything about it. I'm trying different media, still searching for my style. How do you deal with days of feeling non-productive? Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. Feeling non-productive. I mean, there's so many reasons why you would feel non-productive, right? Maybe it's like you're creatively blocked or you're really distracted. Some days I just roll with it. If I actually don't have a lot of pressing things, I will just, I don't know, work on a project in the yard, or maybe just do my own personal project or something like that. But I think the important thing is if you're feeling non-productive, I mean, and you want to be more productive, I always start with a list, right? I mean, if I feel a little bit stuck for what to do, I just start listing things that I may need to be doing, and it helps just to write it out. And then at least it gives me a few things to cross off my list and feel like I'm being productive again. And once you get going, crossing things off your list, I think things get better from there. So Taylor De Beer offers a suggestion for illustration inspiration that's offline. She says Breathe magazine is great. I'll have to check that out. Thanks, Milan. So Natalie Mitchell says, not a question, but my favorite Skillshare class of yours is Drawing Toward Illustration. Learn tons from each class and appreciate the effort you put in. So thank you. Thank you for saying so, Natalie. I really appreciate that. So Drawing Toward Illustration is a class where I talk about the disconnect between how we draw and how we illustrate. And so I think a lot of the time we feel like we have maybe a really great, lively sketch. And then when it comes time to like making it actually all come together and retain that sense of energy that we had in the sketch, when we start trying to like build it up in Procreate or Photoshop or Illustrator, it loses that initial freshness. And so Drawing Toward Illustration, I show how I tackled that big conundrum, which I think is a huge pain point for new illustrators, just trying to figure out what I consider is the difference between illustration and drawing. And one of my little sticky notes that I put up on my wall to remind myself, it says, don't illustrate how you draw. And so it's like this paradox of, we call illustration drawing, but I think the two are very they're obviously related, but they're kind of, they use different skill sets and they have different intentions and purposes. So yeah, thanks for hyping my classes, Natalie. So Hannah Go asks, hi Tom, for stable income, can you share average of how many work in progress works do you have in your hand in a month? Hannah, I think what you mean is like, how many projects do I have simultaneously, like at the same time, right? If that's what you mean, I would say it really varies. And since COVID started last year, my workload has really changed. I actually really shifted this year from doing maybe 75% illustration and 25% other income-bearing activities like teaching on Skillshare, and that's totally inverted. So this year, I'm probably over 75% teaching in terms of my activities, and that includes like making classes and writing and all the background stuff that happens leading up to my classes, but it actually also includes just the income generated. Like 75% of my income right now is generated from royalties from Skillshare classes. And so that's just because since COVID, everyone's been doing these online classes, and my client work, requests for client work has just gone down. It's actually starting to step back up. And so for me, it's hard to come up with a number of simultaneous projects. I think the most I could do is probably, the most I've ever done, I think, is around 8 or 9 simultaneous illustration projects at a given time. And that's, I think that that's crazy. It's nuts to me that I did that, and that maybe I'll do that again. So one way I look at it is like, you know what you need to earn to keep the lights on in your house and keep food on your table. So maybe look at it less in terms of how many jobs you can do in a month. I think it's just more about how much income do you need per month, right? And then try and make that at least every month. I think I'm just trying to think of any strategies that I have for doing that. I mean, really, it's just about trying to get paid fairly for your work. So when work comes in and the budget's a little low, and when you work out the time you think you'll spend on it, and compare it to what you'll earn, you might find that you're earning $15 an hour or less or something like that, in which case you should feel justified asking up a little bit, even if it's $50, even if it's $100. I hope to be talking more about how to talk about pricing soon, and I have in previous videos, and I'll leave after this session, I'll leave a link in the video description. But yeah, I have done a little bit of trying to talk about how to price work. It's a tricky art, but I'd say try and price your work fairly. Make sure that, even a job, let's just say you get an illustration project comes to you and they have a $2,000 budget. You think, oh, a couple $1,000, that's pretty good. But then you look and they want 10 illustrations and they're quite big and they're going to be quite detailed. By the time you're done, maybe you've worked, 100, trying to think of like how long, maybe you've worked 200, 300 hours on it. And by at that point, obviously $2,000 is not a lot of money anymore. So you really want to make sure that you're asking a fair price and making sure that when it breaks down to like this hourly amount that you're earning, we don't charge by the hour as illustrators, or I don't personally, and I don't think other people should either. But I think you want to look at that just kind of secretly, like what would this break down if I were earning an hourly wage? And you want to make sure that it's definitely above minimum wage. So thanks for your question, Hannah. Lauren says, I've heard that from other teachers, Skillshare classes have become huge. Yeah, so I guess it's definitely been surprising what you can earn on, what I've been able to earn on Skillshare. I have been with them since 2015. I was there a little bit early, and I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but they're very supportive, and I've just built up a good relationship with them and kind of have an amazing connection with my audience. My audience on Skillshare is so engaged and very positive, and so I think that really helps motivate me to keep making my classes on Skillshare and to really pour my heart into them, because I really feel like I know my audience to some degree, certainly more than any other kind of public platform that I have. So yeah, I mean, it's great. And even if I wasn't earning as much on Skillshare as I am, just the community aspect of connecting with other creatives and sharing something that I know how to do and seeing how that helps other people is hugely rewarding. So Taylor says, would you say it's a bad climate to make the jump to full-time illustration coming from a full-time agency job? So I assume you mean like you're working as a designer, Taylor. And I don't know about what the climate is right now for everybody. I think there's little pockets of opportunity right now that are different than maybe they have been a couple years ago. Like I said, like I found like people just came to Skillshare in droves in a surprising way. So that's been really good. I haven't struggled at all since COVID started. And in fact, I've kind of appreciated the big shift from kind of my usual illustration workflow. But, I'm just gonna, sorry, my camera is kind of turned off here. We back here? All right. So sorry, got interrupted. What just happened was I'm recording on my SLR camera here, and because it's not a specific video camera, it times out after about half an hour, and I just have to wake it up by pressing the shutter button. So that's what happened there. So anyway, is it a bad climate to start? I really think that there's always going to be something that's scary about getting into illustration. When I first started working, first as a designer, and then very close after as a freelance illustrator, it was like around 2008. There's the big kind of economic crisis there then, and I was able to find work no problem, and so I think it really just depends. It's hard to speak to that. I would just say the word jump scares me a lot. I actually don't. There are jumps that we feel like we're making, but I never recommend someone to say like jump into something else cold from something else. So if let's just say you have a good job as a designer in an agency or in a comfortable living, but you're itching to get into illustration. If you don't have something stacked up in illustration yet, I wouldn't recommend just jumping into it. I'd say get your feet wet and get a sense of what illustration looks like. Make sure you're starting to build up some actual demand for your illustration, and you know that you have demand for your illustration before jumping into it, because otherwise it will likely not work out at first for you. And this happened to me when I had a agency job as a designer, and then I knew that I wanted to like freelance, and so I quit my job. I had the luxury of my wife was also working, so she brought home the bacon while I basically tried my first freelance stint, and that lasted about a summer. I made about $1,500, and I was like, this is not going to work out. So I went back to being employed for a while, and it was really hard to go back to having a job when I really wanted to be kind of more self-sufficient, run my own business. But what I did was, as I was working at these jobs that I wasn't super happy with, I started building up actual demand for my work. And first that was doing design, but always trying to like get my illustration in there somehow. And in that way, I was able to sort of prime the pump and get things going. And by the time at that point, it was like I had a really good feeling for like, now's a good time to move away from the comfortable salaried job into a freelance illustration. It's still a risk. It's still probably not going to pay as much as what I was earning before at first, but I know I can do it and I want to. This is the time. So that's kind of what I would say about making the jump. Just make sure that you stack the deck a little bit in your favor for illustration before really devoting yourself to it, and maybe burning a bridge to a job that's putting food on your table and otherwise making your life comfortable at first, if that makes sense. So thanks for your amazing question. Natalie Mitchell here says that Jessica Hische has a good PDF on the art of pricing. I actually didn't know she had a book about that, so that's really good to know. I'm going to have to check that out. She has also a really good book on how to make hand lettering. I think it's called In Progress. I have it. That, even though I do mostly illustration, I learned a ton about lettering and about working kind of just like as a tiny like skill that I got out of it. I was working with the pen tool in a more skilled way. The pen tool is kind of, it's in Photoshop and Illustrator, and I use it all the time. I even have a little class on Skillshare called Pen Tool Wizard. Shows how to use the pen tool. I made that class before taking Jess Hische's reading her book and kind of getting some pointers from her. But she really, I think one of the awkward things about the pen tool is just trying to get your curves controlled properly and not have like corners and awkward elements of your pass that you make using the pen tool. And she really lays out clearly, because when you're illustrating, when you're creating custom lettering, it really matters how crisp and clean your shapes are that you make with the pen tool. So she really shows how to do that, gives some great tips. So just a little aside there. Yeah, I'm a big fan of hers. Lauren McCall asks, when will your book release? Man, I hope, like, my goal this year in 2021 is to have a manuscript for the book. So just like I know what the book is, it's defined, and I can I can conceivably either send it to a publisher or I can self-publish. So I want to have basically my book in its raw, at least kind of first draft stage, done by the end of this year. And when will it be released? Hopefully late 2022 would be a realistic best guess. So Jocelyn Chan says, really love your classes. You remind me a lot of my fine arts prof in Cégep. Your classes feel like part of a curated program rather than a random Skillshare class. Well, that's a great compliment. Thank you very much, Jocelyn. I assume you're in Quebec if you say Cégep. I think that's what that is. But yeah, I don't know what to say. I know that there are a ton of amazing teachers and amazing classes on Skillshare, but there are definitely, it's an open platform and anyone can make a class. And some people take it a lot seriously and others maybe just try it out and don't pour as much into it. And I definitely take it seriously and I definitely pour myself into it. Like I said before, I really connect to my Skillshare audience in a way that I don't with most other ways. It's just such a full experience because we're like, I make this content, I share these skills that are kind of close to my heart, and then people create projects based on what I taught. Like they do the thing that I designed, if that makes sense. Like they do the project that I designed, and then I see people do it, and I see people from all over the world doing this, and all different techniques and styles. And the first time that happened to me, my first experience of teaching on Skillshare, when I did inky illustrations way back in 2015, it was like I couldn't believe that there were people watching my videos and making illustrations using my techniques. I thought that was so neat, and so I really took to the format and the platform right away. And so maybe that's why I'm able to, I don't know, maybe that's a reason for the success of my classes, I guess I'll say. So yeah. So hi Sharanya. Just looking for some more questions here. Taylor says, we'll be placing your book next to the Lisa Congdon books on the bookshelf. Awesome. Yeah, I have 2 of her books. I don't know how many she's written, but I have Find Your Artistic Voice and I have Art Inc. And, candidly, I bought these as research just for my own class writing and stuff like that. But I'm also a fan of Lisa Congdon. Yeah, and her books are 2 of the best examples of books on these topics of like running an art like a freelance art or illustration business and finding your voice. I think she's boldly done 2 books on these subjects that previously didn't exist. And I think she's done a great job of it. So I really hope that my book will complement books like hers. And I also believe my book will be different in the sense, like Lisa's books are very, well, yeah, it's hard to explain other than like, there's a lot of different sections and a lot of like little sidebars and stuff like that. And I feel like I want to make a book with it's almost more like just like, if you think about a book like, almost like it's not going to be a novel, but like the way a novel is typeset, it's just like straight through one type size, and it's clear chapters. It's just supposed to be like a guide through the process without getting too far into like making it like this graphically pleasing book. I think I'll obviously want to put some examples and illustrations and some diagrams maybe in it, but I definitely want to have a book that feels more like I don't know, like the way you'd read like a Malcolm Gladwell book or some other kind of motivational book. I like to use Austin Kleon as an example, where you can kind of read it both as a guide and almost like a meditation as well. So that's kind of like the format that I'm thinking of right now. It's really supposed to be as specific to my process as I can make it, while making it apply to as much as diverse of people in creativity as possible, especially illustrators. Everyone's going to have different things that they bring to their process. So I'm trying to create like this template that people can kind of bring their own skills and their own personality types and stuff to. And so it will have like this layer of motivational, inspirational kind of flavor to it. And I hesitate to use motivational, inspirational, because I don't see myself as a Tony Robbins type, and I don't think that I'm going to go there. But yeah, I think all this to say, I love Lisa Congdon's books, and I'm hoping to just provide something that complements them rather than just copies their format specifically. So Sylvana asks, what classes have you taken yourself on Skillshare? So yeah, I mean, as a Skillshare teacher, I guess the question is, do I actually take classes myself? And I do dip into classes from time to time. One of the most memorable classes for me is Martina Floor's Golden Secrets of Hand Lettering, another lettering resource. We were talking about Jess Hish before. Martina's classes are really well done, well produced, and she really dishes out a lot of actual like secret, great techniques that she uses. She shares them on the platform, and they're super helpful. I'm trying to remember. I mean, I dip into a lot of classes just to kind of research, but I haven't done a lot of like actual taking of classes and doing projects. I've done, and I'm kind of embarrassed. Like a lot of the classes that I have watched, that I have gotten a lot of benefit from. I can't even remember the teachers' names. It's like I watch it, get the tip that I need, and then I move on. I think a lot of people must do Skillshare classes in this way, where they may not make a project, but they'll watch the videos, they'll definitely learn some stuff, and then they kind of apply it to whatever problem they're actually working on at that time. That's kind of how I use Skillshare. It's almost like when you go to YouTube and you look things up. I try to make classes that people get more immersed in than that. That's why my classes are longer and they're more, they go deeper. So they're not really the kind of classes you can go for a quick tip. But all this to say, I remember taking Martina Floor's class. I dip into classes on there all the time just to check it out, but I'm embarrassed to say that I actually don't remember names. I think his name's Jordy. He does a lot of Premiere Pro classes and kind of on the filmmaking side. And I've obviously need to produce my own videos for Skillshare and stuff like this. So I think his name's Jordy, and his classes have been really helpful. And so, yeah, that's my Skillshare experience. Okay, well, we have about 20 minutes left until it's 11. And so hopefully we'll get a few more questions in. Otherwise, maybe we'll wrap up early. We have Natalie Mitchell coming in again to save the day. Do you offer paid portfolio reviews at all? So the answer is no. It's something I've thought about, but it's something I haven't thought about it very thoroughly. I like the idea of doing a portfolio session. Maybe you can tell me like what that would look like for you, like what you would expect out of that. I often get requests from people to check out their website or their Instagram profile and give them feedback. Like I'll literally get someone DMing me that I've never heard of before saying, yo, can you just check out my Instagram real quick and just tell me what you think of my work? And unfortunately, I can't do that. The thing about reviewing people's portfolios is it's very specific to you and your situation. I will have whatever my opinion is about your work right off the bat. I might not like it. It might not be my style. I might really love it. And so I come in with lots of biases when I look at someone's work. I think the important thing is how does your current portfolio relate to where you're at right now as an artist in your development and what your goals are. So maybe you want to be a kid's picture book illustrator, and you have a kind of whimsical fantasy style or something like that. Maybe both those things are things that I'm maybe less qualified from my own personal experience. Like I don't work in a fantasy style. I do kids books, but maybe it's like a totally different genre kids book or something like that. In which case, obviously, I feel like I could give some ideas or tips, but I'd first almost need like a mini interview, some kind of intake, in order to like an intake questionnaire, just to see, what are your goals, even so far as like, why me? Like, what do you think I can bring to this conversation, especially if it's very different from what I do? And I don't think the fact that everybody has a different style invalidates me from commenting on it or giving feedback, but it does. My fear is always, or my concern is to not destroy someone creatively because of some personal opinion. Like I want to make sure that I'm hitting on the points they need right away. And so an example of this is on my Skillshare classes on the projects. People say they want to have feedback, but I always ask back, like, is there anywhere specifically you're struggling that I can help you with? And that helps me direct my feedback on their project a little more than just kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's the first time they've ever illustrated, in which case I can't be as picky about what they've done as I could be if it's like someone who's been illustrating for 5 years. Then I can maybe get a little bit more robust in my critique. So all that to say, Natalie, I think paid portfolio reviews and even mentorship opportunities, I want to look more into these things. I just haven't figured out a way of how to fit them into my schedule, kind of thing. Like how do I work them into what I'm already doing, and how do I make it work for everybody? So hopefully one day. And Jocelyn asked, do you listen to music when you work? Yeah, of course. I feel like that's a given. And I listen, I guess the follow-up question to that would be like, what? I listen to a whole bunch of stuff. I listen to, sometimes I listen to like old school hip hop. Sometimes, a lot of the times I'm listening to like kind of ambient kind of electronic music. It sounds lame, but it just kind of sits there in the background and doesn't distract me too much, and it keeps me flowing. So I'll even find like a playlist on Spotify that's like chilled out focus or something like that, and I'll just play that because it's kind of doesn't distract me. I love jazz. I love listening to jazz when I work, and especially like it depends on the time of day, but if I'm working at night, listening to jazz and working kind of like chilled out jazz, like Bill Evans piano or something like that, like, and not saxophone. I'm not a big saxophone fan. So yes, I listen to music when I work. And maybe you guys can let us know what you guys are all listening to when you're working in the chat here. But yeah, maybe this is actually a good opportunity just to remind you guys that, first of all, thank you for being here. And I just want to say, if you're enjoying this conversation and you want to just give me a little support, be sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here and you haven't subscribed, I do try to post a little. I do post sporadically, is what I'm saying. Like it's a little bit unpredictable. So if you subscribe, you will definitely be notified every time something like this comes up or a new video gets published. So thanks for being here. And I'll see if there's a few more questions, and then we'll wrap it up in a few minutes. So Kelly Fisher asks, I'm new to your classes. Which one or in which order do you suggest I take them? Well, I guess again, it depends. Like, where are you? What are you looking for? What's your experience level? I think if you, I, th- I think my later classes are more broad, like more deep. I go beyond just teaching techniques. So I think starting with odd bodies, sweet spots, drawing toward illustration, and the style class. These are my four latest classes, kind of my bigger ones. And these all kind of go deep on, so odd bodies is about, if you struggle with illustrating people, I just offer some ways of getting into that and entering into illustrating people in a very expressive way. And it's I think it may be still my most popular class. And then drawing toward illustration is like I said before, it's just a way of helping you connect how you draw with how you illustrate more, and kind of navigating the tension between those two different things. And then Sweet Spots is about illustrating small editorial illustrations, spot illustrations. So if you're interested in learning, I'd say that's a great place to start if you want to get a feel for like illustrating for a specific, in a more professional context. So Sweet Spots might be a great starting point. Style class, I would say, is, and that's my second most recent class, is the style class, and that's definitely an ambitious class, because and it's a little bit more advanced because it's about people who have been illustrating and going through the struggle of trying to find their style. And so this class kind of meets people in that place. And so you probably should have been already kind of thinking about some of the questions we talk about in that class. But then I have a few very technical technique-based classes. My most recent one is printmaking inspired illustration in Photoshop, where I just basically show exactly how I use Photoshop and digital brushes to illustrate in my style. It's kind of like I show even my digital brushes. So that's an easy, low bar kind of class to take, that if you're just looking for, really getting your feet wet in the illustration world and trying a few different techniques out. So thank you for your question. Okay, so Yvonne Balchunas, I'm very sorry. Yvonne says, you used an ink and digital workflow in some of your earlier classes. That's true. More digital and newer classes. Is that reflective of your professional practice, or is all digital brushes easier for teaching? Great question. And the quick answer is I work almost purely digitally now. Ink still holds a very special place in my heart. It's just, since I got an iPad and the pencil and started using Astropad, so I basically have a visual graphics tablet, like a screen-based graphics tablet. I have all the control that I couldn't get before when I didn't have that, because I only had my mouse. And for a year or so, I had a Wacom tablet, like just without a screen on it. And that was super awkward for me. I didn't enjoy that at all. So my workaround was using ink and tracing paper and different tracing techniques, scanning it in. And it actually came up with it resulted in a kind of an interesting way of illustrating. And I still I'm always wondering if I should go back to that, because there's something that I've lost by not using that digital analog workflow. Like, there's a bit more play involved in the actual making of the illustration. It's more fun. But the answer is I switched to digital when digital became way easier and I found myself having more control. And a key thing that I found was just I was able to find a few brushes that really do what I want to achieve. And it all kind of is contained in Photoshop. So just commercially speaking, when I'm working on a deadline, it's just so much easier and faster. And I kind of like how things look now. Like, I feel like I've figured it out. So I'm pretty happy with it. But every now and then I like to throw in some inky element that I made with a brush and paper and scan it in, just to nod back to that more playful process I used to have. So Natalie Mitchell says, I don't have one yet, but I would imagine you would look at 6 pieces or so and give feedback on the 3 C's. Okay, so we're talking it back about your question about portfolio reviews. So, okay, so you'd want to get feedback specifically on what I call the 3 C's: the composition, content, and concept. So yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so I'll definitely give portfolio reviews a bit of a think, and I don't know. I suppose I'll announce when that happens. I could announce it here on YouTube. I also have a newsletter that I started to send out semi-regularly. So if you go to my website, tomfroze.com, and I believe it's in the contact page, you can sign up for my newsletter there. And I blast out 2 or 3 things that I've been working on, or whatever's news around here, every week, maybe every 2 weeks. I try not to inundate your mailboxes with an email every week. Regardless, I always make sure that I actually have something to say, and something that I think that recipients of the newsletter will care about. And so, yeah, maybe sign up for the newsletter and you'll get some information you'll get that announcement if and when I start portfolio reviews. But thanks, Natalie. So Double Fun Art says, sir, thank you for all your classes. My question is, is it normal, like I felt exhausted and tired sitting with a laptop and designing? How should we inspire and motivate for designing? So I think your question here is that, well, it sounds like, and I don't mean to poke fun here, it sounds like you're bored, exhausted and tired sitting with a laptop and designing. You're bored doing this, doing your design. So that's not good. If you're in the creative industry and you want to be, doing this for the long haul, it's good to find a way of keeping your interest. So I guess the thing is to just question, what would interest you? What do you care about? What inspires you? Where do you go and look for inspiration? Why did you want to get into design in the first place? What things did you see that made you think, oh, design's a thing, I want to do that? So from there, you can maybe dig in a bit deeper. Maybe you saw a logo that you really liked, and that really made you think, I'd like to make logos. And so it's really just about finding resources about logos, and more specifically about the kind of logos you like. So and this goes back to one of the first questions we had today, which is, finding inspiration on and offline. You can get an annual like Communication Arts Design Annual, and they'll have branding in there. And, I'm just using branding as an example, but, how to be inspired is you seek out inspiration. You have to look for it. You have to dig. It's like buried treasure. So thank you for your question. So Jungmin Lee says, I've been trying many styles, illustrations I love, and if trying other style will help me, my style. Oh, I'm sorry, Jungmin. I'm not sure I understand the question. If you want to try sending that in again, I'll try and get that. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what you're asking there. So Abdullah says, who buys the illustrations? Who needs these illustrations? What illustrations are we talking about, Abdullah? If you want to just clarify with that, that would be great. But no, we lost our picture again. I'm still here, guys. Here I am. Yeah, so we've got about just under 5 minutes left, but Natalie says, this is what's so great about Tomo. Maybe I shouldn't read this, but I'm reading it now. He isn't just saying, yes, pay me, and I'll look at your work. He actually cares to provide value. Well, thank you, Natalie. I didn't realize that was me going to be tooting my own horn here through your words, but I definitely don't have that mindset of just wanted to make a quick buck through portfolio reviews. It really matters to me that I'm actually providing a service of value and encouraging. That's a key thing for me is encouraging people and not discouraging them, because I think the wrong words during a critical review can destroy someone. And I don't want to be the person. I've heard a lot of stories of art teachers who've like demoralized their students by telling them like they don't belong in art, or they should quit before they fail even bigger and things like that. And yeah, I don't see my role necessarily as being the guy to say that kind of thing. It's more like you say you want to be creative, you want to pursue creativity, you want to get better at it. Like I want to try and encourage you in that, not discourage you. So Jungmin Lee is trying again here. So thanks for your patience, as I kind of had a hard time understanding before. She says, or they say, sorry, I'm here again. Will trying different illustrations help me to develop my own style? So I'm going to answer this as my last question, just to wrap things up. But thanks for your question, Jungmin. Will trying different illustration styles help me to develop your own style? Absolutely, 100%. Yes. I always encourage people to find a way of focusing in and refining and homing in on maybe a more singular style. Excuse me. This is live. I sometimes have to burp. Got that out of the way. So the ultimate goal is to have at least just fewer styles to work in. And if possible, just one, because that's just strong branding and it makes you more confident and strong as an illustrator. But along the way, you have to try other styles to get a feel for what you like and what you enjoy. And I talk about this in the style class. And it's really about at first imitating other styles or borrowing techniques that other people are using, because when you first start illustrating, you don't have a technique, you don't have a style, you have nothing, and you need to try different things. And what's going to happen over time, if you're diligent and always really creatively applying how you copy and imitate, what's going to happen is something new will emerge. It'll be kind of a composition, a composite, or a combination of all your influences, plus whatever new things you bring to the table. And if you look at my style, if you look at any illustrator's style, you'll be able to pick up their own influences, at least to some degree. And so definitely, you can't just start off having one style that you're super certain of right away. I think that's impossible. Like we all have to kind of build off what's already there. So that was a great question to end on. And CK Arnold just asks one more, or he basically, are you a Star Wars fan? If so, happy Star Wars Day. So yes, that's a great thing to end on. I gotta say, I am aware that it is May the 4th. So May the 4th be with you guys. I am not really a Star Wars fan. The only reason I'm even aware of the fact that it's Star Wars Day is that my daughters are having Star Wars Day at their school today, and there was a big brouhaha this morning about having a Star Wars themed costume, and nobody was prepared for that. So that was my Star Wars Day experience. But yeah, guys, I think I may have some closing notes. But and we're just a minute over 11, and so we're doing pretty good. I just want to say thank you guys to everyone. Thanks for your questions, or just for being here in the audience. And of course, thanks to everyone who watches this video in the future. So my apologies to anyone whose questions I may have missed. I feel like I almost got all the questions today. And of course, if you want to just send your question to me through a DM, or maybe in the comments here of this video, I'll do my best to get back to you about that, or even answer it in a future Q&A. So as always, guys, please be sure to hit the like button if you found this video helpful, and subscribe and all that jazz. Is there anything else I'm missing? Yeah, well, thanks for hanging out with me in my garage. I'm very thankful that it wasn't noisy at all here. So things more or less went to plan, other than my video camera turning off 2 times. So anyway, that's it, guys. I'll hopefully have another Q&A session with you guys in the future. Meanwhile, keep asking great questions and keep working them out in your work. I'll see you guys later.